September is National Emergency Preparedness Month, and at the City of St. Paul, our goal is to be ready for the unexpected. National Preparedness Month is sponsored by the Ready campaign, a national public service advertising campaign sponsored by the Federal Emergency Management Agency in partnership with the Ad Council and the National Citizen Corps. National Preparedness Month has been held each September for the past 9 years and is designed to encourage people to take simple steps to prepare for emergencies in their homes, businesses, and communities. In recognition of National Preparedness Month, the City of St. Paul's Department of Emergency Management, along with the St. Paul Public Schools and the Minnesota Children's Museum, are hosting an all-day emergency preparedness event called Are You Ready? On Sunday, September 20th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Bring the whole family because admission is free through the generosity of Target Corporation at the Minnesota Children's Museum. Emergency responders from the St. Paul Fire and Police Departments, along with the St. Paul Public Schools, local St. Paul hospitals, and others will be on hand to provide your family with the information you need in case of an emergency. You'll learn tips on being prepared for everything from a house fire to floods. More information on the Are You Ready event is on the city's website at stpaul.gov/ready. My job as Emergency Management Director is to help ensure the city is prepared for all types of emergency situations. Some ways we do that is to develop emergency plans that all departments in the city will follow, to develop a system and a place where we carry out those functions, and to work with our other city departments and agencies that we call partner agencies to make sure that they are ready, just like we're asking the public to be ready. So just as we take steps at the city to be prepared for emergency, it's important that you prepare your family for the unexpected. Everyone should have a plan. There are several resources available that can assist you in preparing for an emergency, and today we'd like to take the opportunity to provide you with some information you need to help keep your family safe. We also want to share with you information on how the City of St. Paul is prepared for emergencies like fires, floods, human-caused events, and even biological events like the recent H1N1 flu virus outbreak. I'm here today with my public safety colleagues, Assistant Police Chief Matt Bostrom and the St. Paul Fire Chief Tim Butler, who have both agreed to answer some questions about emergency preparedness. So, Chief Bostrom, let's start with you. How can people prepare themselves and their families for citywide emergencies?
Well, Rick, I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you today about such an important topic. And in your opening comments, I think you really touched on one of the key things that each one of us needs to do, and that is to prepare a plan. And then after that, once you make a plan, then prepare a kit. We'll talk about maybe those things in that order. When I use that phrase, make a plan, a lot of things it should come down to things that we would normally do and we take for granted, but we've never written them down. So for instance, when a kid gets home from school and a parent can't get home at their typical time, and so who does that child call if they need an adult? Well, that's what we're talking about. In times of emergency, it's important for families to have a network. How do they get a hold of each other when they're separated? Where can they meet together in order to get through some sort of difficult time, whether it's weather related or something else? And so to leverage what we already do, but actually write it down, and then do the next step after you write it down. Practice it. Make sure that your plan works. Don't just depend on only a phone as your single source of communication. What might be some other ways to communicate with each other?
So we've heard a lot about this family emergency kit. Maybe you could spend a little bit of time. What kinds of things would be in a kit like that?
Well, think about what it's like if you had a long-term power outage. And maybe that might be scary to someone, but what might you need? And I think most people would say let's see, I'd probably need a flashlight. I might need some food. I might need some water. I might like to hear what's going on around me, and therefore I'd want a weather radio or other means of communication. Like I said earlier with the making a plan, don't depend on just one means of communication. A weather radio, a standard radio, the internet if you have access, telephones, and so on. So another, maybe a fun way to look at it is if you were going to be gone on a camping trip where there was no running water and no electricity, what would you take for those 3 days? That would be a great thing to put in a container, just like the one you see with us here. And then to have that as part of your family plan, where do you keep your emergency kit? And then if you had to go, even in the dark, you can find this, and you know exactly what's in there.
Sure. That's great advice, Chief. I think it can be a little scary sometimes for some of the younger kids, so we're actually going to play some videos for parents produced by Sesame Street in conjunction with the National Are You Ready campaign that will assist families in making it a little less scary for kids. And then when we come back, we're going to go ahead and talk to Chief Butler about some of the city's response to disasters.
Hello there, it is your old pal Grover. Meet my new friends.
Madison, Isaac, Alexa, Romeo, Amanda,
They have last names too.
Vigo, Shane, Lopez, Rodriguez, Warner.
Everybody has a first and last name, even mommies and daddies. Do you know yours? Do you know your mommies and daddies? If you do not, go find out.
Know your whole name so grown-ups can help you in an emergency. Learn more at ready.gov/sesame.
Hola, Grover, what are you doing?
Oh, I am making my emergency kit. I want to be prepared just in case.
Oh, my friend Mia made a kit with her family. Everyone help. They packed flashlights and batteries, water, food, a radio, and put it where they could find it rápidamente, quickly.
I guess I should take my canoe out of there, huh?
Look, Grover.
Help your family get ready for an emergency. Learn more at ready.gov/sesame.
That was just a sample of Sesame Street Workshop's Let's Get Ready video. We're going to be playing that video and others at our Are You Ready event September 20th at the Minnesota Children's Museum. So we really hope the public will come out and join us in that great event. I'm happy to turn it over now to Fire Chief Tim Butler. And Chief, maybe you could tell us if a disaster or community-wide emergency happens, what should the public do?
It's a good question, Rick. Thank you. 3 important points that citizens should remember. First of all, stay calm and stay patient. Disasters and emergencies cause fear. They cause uncertainty. It's normal to be afraid. When parents become afraid, when they panic, it has a devastating effect on those around them, including children. Children get panicky then too. So it's important to stay calm. Also, it's important to stay patient, because when disaster strikes, roadways and streets are often blocked or inaccessible. Cell phones and telephones might go down. You may not have the information that you would most want to have. And so it's important just to have patience until some of that infrastructure and some of those directions can come out. The second important piece is to make sure that you've checked the people around you. Check on their safety and welfare. Check your family, check the people living in your home or your apartment building, and then check on your neighbors and see how they're doing. The third thing is listen for important information and instructions from public safety workers. Oftentimes after a disaster or an emergency, you'll be told by officials what to do or what not to do. And it's important to promptly and calmly follow those directions.
Great advice, thanks. We heard a lot about this shelter in place. What is shelter in place, and what kinds of situations might require someone to shelter in place?
Well, sheltering in place, Rick, is nothing more than taking a temporary place of safety until a danger has passed. If you think about Minnesota severe weather, going to your basement into an interior space with no windows is a great place to take temporary shelter until a storm has passed. The importance of that shelter and the location of that in your building, whether it be in school or at work or at home, depends a lot on the emergency that you're going to be facing. And that's why it's important to pre-plan, kind of in your mind, think through, what do I do in a snowstorm? What would I do if the power went out? What would I do if there was a tornado? Where would I go for safety temporarily with my family, my pets, and myself? The second important thing about emergency shelters is you need to have the supplies in that shelter and the emergency equipment in that shelter before disaster strikes. So having a family emergency kit in your basement is a great place to kind of pre-prepare for going to that emergency shelter in your basement during, for example, a tornado.
Thanks, Chief Butler. And Chief Bostrom, Chief Butler mentioned being patient and being informed. What ways could people become informed and get information about when to shelter in place and what they should do?
Well, one of the things I touched on a little bit earlier was that family emergency kit, and one of the things we highly recommend is that people acquire a weather service radio. And the other thing to make sure that when you have one of these, this would be an example, that you get them that they'll run on not just one power source. You know, think in terms of battery, that if your power was out, could you operate your radio at that time? That'd be another thing to think about. So this would be one great way to remain in contact and get as much up-to-date information as you can in a timely fashion. And then, so that's one way. And as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about a family making a plan, not to just choose one method for getting your information, let's continue to use our cable service, cable channels, regular radio channels will be broadcasting information as well. Use those. And then there's another organization out there that's really helpful to bridge the gap, particularly if there's language issues, and that's Echo Minnesota. And that's another place where people can tune into. And I think you're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I think that's another opportunity for people to get up-to-date and important emergency information.
Yeah, that Echo Minnesota is a great resource we have in the Twin Cities area. ECHO stands for Emergency Community Health Outreach, and we'll put their website right up here on the screen for the viewers. But it's an excellent way for people to get emergency preparedness and response information in their language of choice. So terrific. Thanks, Chief. Chief Butler, so we've got folks that are patient. We have folks that are informed. Is there other things that families can do to be prepared for emergencies?
Well, we've talked about the importance of having a family emergency kit and having a family emergency plan. It's also important to practice that plan. Just like school children practice fire drills, it's important for a family to practice going to the basement, going to an emergency shelter. Examples of how to contact a caregiver if mom's not home or dad's not home. Those are important elements. So having a plan, having a kit, practicing that plan, and then checking the basic safety equipment around your home, making sure that there's fresh flashlight batteries or fresh batteries in your NOAA weather radio, making sure that a fire extinguisher might be accessible to your garage or your home. Those would be important things to remember too.
I'd like to take a little bit of time here to talk about how people can prepare themselves for this H1N1 flu. H1N1 is simply a way to describe this current influenza that it's being experienced. It is a worldwide pandemic, and a pandemic simply means that there is cases in every country or every continent, excuse me, and thankfully the severity is not devastating at this point. It is tracking about the same as seasonal influenza, which is something that we see every year, and approximately 36,000 people die from seasonal influenza every year. So our health officials are on top of this. They're developing plans, they're working on vaccines, but there are some things that individuals and families can do to prepare themselves for this event. Number one, the number one thing that people can do to prevent H1N1 illness as well as seasonal influenza is to wash your hands. Wash your hands, cover your cough, and the third thing is to stay home from school or from work if you're sick. The current guidance is 24 hours following a fever of 100.4 degrees or higher, you need to stay home. So once that fever goes down, you need to stay home for 24 hours. You need to keep your kids out of school, out of recreation programs, community education, out of work. So all of the things that we're talking about today are applicable to whether you're dealing with an influenza situation or an ice storm, since we live in Minnesota, where having a plan for your family, if someone in the household is sick, what do we do when we can't bring that child to school? Mom or dad or older siblings can't go to work. having a plan for that is going to be important. The current estimation is that many more people will become sick from H1N1 influenza during this indoor season. In Minnesota, we bring people together, and because of our weather, we close folks up into schools and businesses. We need to maintain a healthy work environment. So I know it sounds simple, and maybe people want to have something more than those three simple things, but really, the things that your mother told you when you were a child about covering your cough, washing your hands, and then that third thing of staying home from work or school when you're sick is really, really important to keep everybody safe this flu season. Chief Butler, we've talked a lot about what individuals and families can do to be prepared. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what the fire department does to prepare specifically for disasters or citywide emergencies.
Right. Thanks, Rick. Of course, in addition to the training that our firefighters and paramedics go through for their normal jobs of fighting fires and responding to medical emergencies, we've done some preparatory work for large-scale disasters, mainly in regards to building partnerships across the regions with police, emergency management folks, the hospitals and healthcare systems. Those partnerships are very important. When you talk about family planning and having an emergency plan for your family or your home, we do the same thing in our public safety agencies, and practicing that plan with our partners is very important. Being on a communication system and practicing communications has been very helpful too. We are on a metro-wide radio system now, so all emergency responders can talk together and share information. That's been very helpful. In addition to that, leveraging federal grants and private donations has helped us build capabilities that we didn't have before in both equipment and supplies. So all of those things are vitally important in addition to our daily training.
Great, thanks. Chief Bostrom, we've had some pretty significant experiences here in our community, whether they're planned events or major emergencies. What kinds of specific things does the police department have in terms of plans and training for citywide emergencies?
Well, kind of like a family plan, we have an emergency operations plan and for our department, and that's scalable, which means we could use that plan as an architecture for large events or perhaps a large emergency. And so we test that plan, and like my colleagues here, we do the same in our departments as well. And like Chief Butler was saying, our ability now, even over the last 5 to 7 or 8 years, has come such a long way in what our level of preparedness and readiness is, because just of those things, our ability to communicate better, a better planning process, and then not only that, we practice our plans. And emergency management, as you know, Rick, is one of the leaders in that and providing those opportunities for us to test those plans, and then you learn lessons each time you test those plans. And so for our officers, our training has continued to improve. We look at things much more regional than we used to. It used to be we'd think, well, if it happened in St. Paul, we would handle it. Well, we've discovered that as we look at a large problem, a large emergency, or a large event, that probably will exhaust all of our resources. Therefore, who are the people that might come to help us? And if that's the case, we should probably practice with them in advance. We should take our own advice that we've been giving here today, take the thing that we do inside a household, and let's use that within our agencies and learn how to work with each other. And that's exactly what we've been doing in the public safety circles over the last, as I said, 5 to 7 years. So I feel really good about where we're at, and we're continuing to grow in our ability.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to thank you both for coming here today and participating in this event, and really want to thank you for having your departments actively involved in our event September 20th. So, folks, in wrapping up, I really just want to remind you that on September 20th, from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, in recognition of National Preparedness Month, the City of St. Paul's Department of Emergency Management, along with our police and fire colleagues, our colleagues in Public Works, the St. Paul Public Schools, Minnesota Children's Museum, are hosting an all-day family emergency preparedness event called Are You Ready? Admission's free, so bring the whole family. We would love to see you there. We'll be there along with others that I mentioned to provide your family with the information you need in case of an emergency. You'll get tips on being prepared from everything from fires to floods to crime prevention to medical emergencies. So more information on the Are You Ready campaign is on the city's website at stpaul.gov/ready, or call our office at 651-266-5491. Thanks for watching. We'll see you there.